Hello, hello. Welcome officially to Taproot's webinar, Power Your 2026 Goals with Pro Bono, Building Capacity Amid Uncertainty. I just had this moment of, oh my gosh, we're talking about 2026. We're not just talking about 2026, but we are at the very end of 2025. This year feels like it has flown by. It's been a tumultuous one. It's been filled with, I'm sure high highs and low lows for all of us. And we're all gearing up for ways that our organizations will continue to be challenged and pushed. And we know that amidst this uncertainty, amidst this tumult, nonprofits like you all really are leading the way, providing vital services, being there for our community members, strengthening and uplifting our communities. And so let's get you the resources you need to meet those community demands. We want to get you the resources you need to thrive. So during today's webinar, we're going to be discussing this big, broad question of what is on your nonprofit's 2026 roadmap and how will you get there in a time of social, political, economic uncertainty and shifting funding sources. So a few agenda items. I'll take a minute. I'll introduce Taproot. I know some of you folks indicated when you registered for the event and in that icebreaker poll that you're brand new to Taproot, you're new to the idea of pro bono. So we'll take just a context setting moment right at the top of the event, and I'll share a bit of an introduction to what our nonprofit does. And then we'll explore how pro bono can really help your organization build immediate capacity and also look towards long-term resiliency, right? We want a stronger, more resilient nonprofit sector, and we think pro bono is a great resource towards building that. We'll talk through how to use Taproot's programs to find really high-quality, trustworthy pro bono support. So we'll walk through some of like the actual nitty-gritty of using the Taproot Plus platform in order to access volunteer resources. And along the way, I'll share out some pro bono management best practices, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the event. So definitely, please be active in the chat. We want to hear your questions and direct me to where you want me to spend more time on throughout the webinar and during that Q&A. All right. So a quick introduction to myself. So Kimberly Swartz, you can call me Kim. I am Taproot's Senior Director of Pro Bono Services, which means I do a lot of that thinking about how we can bring resources to nonprofits, what the experience of that nonprofit and volunteer connection actually looks and feels like. And as part of my role, I lead up our Taproot Plus program, which many of you hopefully are familiar with. If so happy to be connecting again. And if not, this is your first time hearing about Taproot or Taproot Plus, we're so lucky and grateful to have this opportunity to meet you. I use she, her pronouns, and my LinkedIn is included here. Happy to connect with anyone on the line. A few logistics notes before we officially get things rolling. We are recording today's event, and that recording link will be shared out with everyone who registered. So if you do end up having to hop early, no worries. You can come back, fast forward to the point in which you hopped, and still get the rest of that information. This is a webinar format, so your main way to communicate with me is going to be that chat box that you see in the bottom right corner of your screen. So please use that. I'm going to be trying my best to monitor that chat as we go throughout today's event. So pop in questions, comments, stories that you might have about your use of pro bono. I'm going to be trying to keep up with those. And my colleague, Kristen Mayku from the Marketing Communications team is on the line. And she's also going to be fielding questions throughout. And anything that would be better addressed to the broader group during Q&A, she'll save that, boost it to me, and we can discuss it at the end of the event. So make sure you stick around for that Q&A period. All right. Just checking my notes, making sure I hit all of those logistics. All right, I would love to take a minute to get to know you all better. So really big appreciation for everyone who's already been in the chat introducing themselves. I'm seeing names, positions, organizations. Please do feel free to share your organization's website and LinkedIn. There's a really amazing network of nonprofits who signed up for today's event and who just exist across the Taproot community. I know one of the things that I'm most grateful for in my role on a day-to-day basis is just getting to know different nonprofit leaders and staff members and the missions that they're working on. I feel like it's just a fabulous education on a day-by-day basis, learning about these societal issues and learning about the unique solutions being employed for them. So appreciate everyone introducing themselves. Hi, Sally. Hi, Sheila. Hi, Christine and John. Really great to have you all here. So keep those introductions going. And as folks are continuing to chime in, I'm going to take that moment to just introduce Taproot for the folks who are a little bit new to our nonprofit. So Taproot Foundation, we're a nonprofit that exists to support our fellow nonprofits. So we were founded back in 2001 with this knowledge that there's a massive resource gap present in the social sector. Organizations, individuals who may very well have solutions to our world's most pressing social challenges simply don't have the financial means or staff capacity to carry out those missions to their fullest extent. And I know you all on the line are very much aware of this. This is your day-to-day, the reality that you're living in. And so Taproot, we're democratizing access to resources for nonprofits, regardless of your mission area, budget size, years you've been in operation, because we're trying to empower these mission-driven organizations by mobilizing skilled volunteers to support and really fuel your organization's work. So really briefly, some information about our programs in case you are new to us. Taproot Plus, this is likely where you know us from, but it's not all that Taproot does. Taproot Plus enables you and your nonprofit to request and manage pro bono support from skilled business professionals. It's a free open access online platform that connects marketing and HR and IT and strategy and finance and ops professionals with opportunities to assist nonprofits who are in need of their expertise. So Taproot Plus, accessible to charitable organizations across the US, UK, EU, India, and Canada. And we have a community of close to 175,000 skilled volunteers, which is really just incredible. We also work with companies and leading grant makers really to fuel our work of creating connections between your nonprofit organizations and dedicated volunteers. We work with these forward-thinking companies and grant makers to develop customized skills-based volunteering programs. So since the early 2000s, our advisory services practice has collaborated with over 100 Fortune 500 companies and other organizations who want to take the expertise of their employees, apply it to nonprofit challenges. And our best-in-class team of consultants works really intensively with these employers, CSR and HR teams to create these customized volunteering opportunities and programming. So we share out information on sponsored local or team-based volunteer opportunities with nonprofit community members whenever available. So if you have a Taproot Plus account, you also become eligible for these corporate or foundation-funded events and programs. And then field building. You know, Taproot, we're a nonprofit and we're dedicated to serving our fellow nonprofits. But as such, we're here to change hearts and minds, right? We want to make it so that every nonprofit has access to the professional infrastructure and capacity resources that they need to fully act on those missions. But in order to do so, we need to make sure that that pro bono, that skills-based volunteerism ethic is so well established across professional fields like finance and advertising and HR that it's baked into their professional career paths. And so Taproot conducts regular nonprofit skills-based volunteerism sector research. We develop free resources and host community building events, fully stocked community events calendar, host an annual pro bono summit, co-founded a global pro bono network, and really the list could go on and on. But the bottom line is these field building resources and events are free of cost because our nonprofit's really dedicated to empowering the growth of skills-based volunteerism to ensure really equitable resource access for nonprofits. I'll put a couple informational slides up here. One of the items that I realized I didn't mention during my logistics spiel, we will be making a copy of this deck available when we share out resources after this event. So if there's anything I breeze through during this presentation, you will have this deck to come back to after the fact. All right, but you can see here, Taproot, we've worked with over 10,000 nonprofits at this point, connecting tens of thousands of volunteers with those organizations, totaling over 300 million in donated professional services. And one question that came up a few times from our registration form was around, hey, my nonprofit just got started, or we don't have any paid staff members. Am I still eligible to use Taproot? So I wanted to take a moment right up front to address that one. Yes, startup and early stage nonprofits are able to leverage Taproot pro bono resources. And our staff is actually really uniquely knowledgeable about startups and volunteer-led organizations, capacity and infrastructure needs. Around 63% of Taproot's nonprofit partners actually have less than 5 full-time employees. So we're very familiar with this model of organizations needing to build infrastructure, build these pieces of strategy and bedrock items for the very first time, so that then they're able to free up more of their time and space to focus on their direct community service work. Okay. Why use pro bono? I'm going to be talking about specific examples of how skilled volunteers can be brought in to build your organization's capacity in a really sustainable fashion. But let's take just an understanding setting moment right up here at the top of our presentation. Why use pro bono as opposed to spending time over your weekend working on these projects off the side of your desk, building or carving out a budget for paid consultants, maybe only tackling one of the projects on your list instead of 5 of the projects because of budgetary constraints. So a few quick things I would note before we get into our examples. One, and a really clear and obvious one, pro bono, it's a fantastic way to build capacity if you are resource-strapped nonprofits. Again, using expert pro bono consultant support can help you tackle projects, freeing up your time and expertise to focus on the items that you are uniquely great at or your team members are uniquely great at. I see pro bono as a way of everybody being able to lean into their own specialization, and then your organization's benefiting from that embrace of specialization. I think it's also a fantastic way to bring new supporters into your network. While we can't guarantee this, we see this countless times where a Taproot nonprofit will connect with a volunteer for a single specific project. They'll work with them for 2 months, and they become a team. They become bonded by that really deep, impactful partnership together. And around 60% of our volunteers end up continuing with their that nonprofit organization in some way, whether as a hands-on volunteer, whether on another pro bono project, or as a board member or even staff member. So these connections continue past just the initial pro bono project if you devote the time and energy to really build that relationship. Obviously, strengthening professional skills, you're going to be learning from a really experienced business professional. So it's a great way to hone new strengths of your own. It's a good way to bring in a third-party perspective to your work so you're not making strategic decisions in a vacuum. I know it can be tough, especially if you're at a smaller organization. Sometimes you don't always feel like you have access to thought partners or social capital to kind of tap into to say, well, what would you do if you were in my shoes? And these are the resources you had available to you. These are the needs you're hearing from community members. Do you think that this approach is the right one? Just having access to expert thought partners is huge for smaller nonprofits. And then, of course, really good way to strengthen relationships with funders as well. If you have a company or foundation that you've already established a working relationship with, or someone that you're trying to nurture a relationship with, ask them, hey, instead of coming and doing some hands-on volunteering with us, maybe we can also do some pro bono consulting, really bring them and make them feel like they're part of your team, apply their skills in a really targeted way. And you can showcase how scrappy you are and also how dedicated you are to building that relationship further. Okay, so hopefully at this point, I've sold you on this idea of pro bono. Now I want to get into how we can use pro bono to build long-term resiliency, especially as we're going into 2026 planning. So a few questions for you, and I'd invite you to consider these questions. If you're comfortable with it, throw responses in the chat box. It'll help me kind of frame up some of the content and examples I share for the rest of the event. But if not, these are just reflection questions. So take note of it, use this to frame up what type of support could be first on your list to tap into from pro bono resources. So my first question for you, what do you think the biggest threat to your organizational success is in the year ahead? We know it's gearing up to be another tumultuous year in the U.S. from a social, political, and economic perspective. So there's certainly some environmental factors there that could affect us. But I'm curious, biggest threats to successes for next year. I'm seeing some comments around diversifying funding strategy. I think that's I think that's something that folks are going to resonate with. Yeah, securing funding is another one. Sustainable funding, staff burnout. That's so real, right? We saw this in 2020, in 2021, leading to the Great Resignation. We're asking a lot of nonprofit professionals and leaders in this moment to fill the gaps left by our governmental systems. Step in, step up for our communities. And so we need to be able to step up and step in for the staff members making this really, really hard work possible. Yeah, training for staff, brand recognition. Okay, these are great. Definitely keep them coming, but I want to make sure we move to our next reflection question. What is a skill set that you're hungry to tap into? This might be a skill set that you don't have on staff. So maybe you've identified there's a critical expertise gap at your organization. Maybe it's a skill that you are personally looking to develop more of in this next year, and you're looking for someone who can almost like be a mentor, coach for you in this area. Strategic planning, program development, yeah, business strategy. I saw CRM, that's a great one for pro bono talent. HR management, accounting, these back of house activities, bookkeeping. Great. Marketing expertise. And it sounds like for segmented audiences. Fantastic. Okay. Keep those coming, and I'm going to move us to a third and final reflection question. What is a 2026 goal that you need additional support to pursue? So we thought broadly about organizational success challenges. We thought broadly about skills that we're hungry or at least interested in tapping into. But now I want you to try and get a little bit more specific, because you're likely already have done or are currently doing your planning for your teams or your personal 2026 goals. And so, what is a specific goal that you are going to need to bring in additional resources to pursue? It could be board resources, it could be staff resources, it could be tech tools. There are ways that pro bono can assist in even securing those resources or can replace some of the funding that you would have earmarked for those resources because you can bring in pro bono to lead those efforts instead. Yeah, I'm seeing some items around board engagement. That's a really great place to get a third-party perspective in the door to kind of help poke and prod, do like a board assessment. Yeah, someone to light a fire under my board. I think that's resonating with a lot of folks. Board recruitment, it looks like, is a big one. Individual giving as a fundraising and business development strategy. And then some items around strategic planning as well and auditing. If you're a newer organization, maybe this is your first time undergoing an audit. Okay, this is great. So this gives me a lot of great specific items to dig into as we go. So please keep considering those reflection questions, because what I'm going to ask you to do by the end of this event is you should be making a list. We're going to go through some pro bono inspiration. I'm going to give you tangible examples of what a pro bono project could look like in some of these nonprofit infrastructure and strategy areas. And so you should be making a list, jotting notes down of, okay, I think that applies to me. I think this could be really useful. And by the end of this event, I want you to go through and consider that list through the lens of the timing of each of those pro bono resources, when you would want to bring them in. I want you to consider how they would stack upon each other, right? In order to do this project successfully, what items will I need to have ready to hand to that volunteer so that they're able to be successful in this work? And am I the right person to manage this pro bono resource too, right? This could be an area where you could pull in board members to manage pro bono resources. Great way to get them more engaged. It could be a place to get your team members some more specific people management experience. So start with creating the list as we go. Hopefully there's going to be some good ideas and inspiration for you throughout this event. But then by the end, I want us to have some tangible next steps, some actionable next steps of how you are actually going to implement these pro bono resources, how you're going to pull them in, and who's going to manage them next year. All right, so without further ado, let's get into these specific examples of volunteer partnerships and what this could look like. And based on the needs people were chatting in, I'm actually going to start with one of the biggest need areas that I saw called out, which was business development and fundraising. So we'll jump right in. So a few specific areas where volunteers could be really helpful in building some of these bedrock items that will fuel your future fundraising and business development plans. I have some notes jotted down on the slide. These are all specific examples of you can come to Taproot and say, I need a pitch deck created. I need someone to review my grant proposal. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me how to improve it. Tell me how to tailor it for this specific funding opportunity. You can come to us and say, I need a pricing exercise. I offer fee-for-service programs. I don't know if I'm offering a competitive price based on other people in my community who do this work, or just the rising rates of inflation. Help me do an exercise here. So these are all specific examples of really well-scoped pro bono projects that we know we have volunteers that we can match you with. But I want to talk a little bit more broadly about finding volunteers for fundraising and business development related needs. This is an area where nonprofits can come to Taproot and kind of get a little bit stuck on this idea of, well, I need someone to come in and tell me how to fundraise better, or I need someone to come in and bring in more individual donors. And something that we have to go back and kind of push against is Taproot's volunteer community is made up of professionals largely from outside of the nonprofit sector. We do have some volunteers who do have grant writing, individual giving, nonprofit fundraising experience, but for the most part, these are for-profit corporate sector professionals. And so my challenge to you all is trying to do a little bit of that translation between, okay, what are corporate professionals really amazing at? And what could my organization use so that we, our staff members, our board members, our volunteers can fundraise more proactively, more successfully? And so these are things like, okay, we need to have a really clear understanding of who our target audiences are. We need to have a really clear understanding of what differentiates ourselves from our competitors or other organizations doing similar work. Great. That is something a corporate professional can absolutely knock out of the park for you. So doing things like a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, doing an environmental scan to figure out, okay, what sets you apart from other like organizations in the field. Amazing way to use corporate skill sets to then further support and fuel your fundraising efforts. Same thing as impact measurement strategy that you'll see here on the slide, right? Oftentimes when I'm consulting with nonprofits and talking through, well, we've applied to dozens of grants and we haven't gotten any. Okay, well, let's talk about what content is going into those grant applications. Do you feel like you're able to highlight the impact of your programs successfully enough? Well, no, we don't have a real post-programmatic evaluation. We don't have surveys set up. We don't have an impact dashboard. Okay, great. That is a fantastic way to start making use of pro bono talent from the corporate space. We have people who are skilled in evaluation, skilled in data analysis, data visualization. That is a fantastic way to link up with corporate volunteers, have their perspective applied to your operations, and then use that data, use the insights that they pull out, embed it in all of your fundraising efforts, in your grant applications, in your individual giving, right? When I see an appeal come through my email or enter my mailbox, I want to know percentage of community members who are rating your services as high. I want to know like the hard data around where my dollar will go and how it's making an impact on your work and your community. And so having that impact measurement strategy, having ways that this data is kind of brought to life through your storytelling is going to be really key for fundraising. So a really fantastic way to make use of corporate talent. All right, so I know a lot of different fundraising related ideas here, but you can certainly link up with volunteers to also do some of like the hard like fundraising specific tasks. You can link up with volunteers to do prospect research, to create a donor user profile on your behalf, to create what your business development strategy, what your revenue diversification strategy should be for 2026. You can actually use volunteers to create your business plan for the first time. So a business plan being how you're connecting your social impact goals, your theory of change, or your mission and vision for your organization back to the revenue generation efforts that is going to be needed to sustain that mission. So if you don't have a business plan yet, that could be a great bedrock infrastructure item that will position your organization for longer term stability in the future. And then one I haven't mentioned, but is a good one, and I know it came up in the chat a few times, CRM setup. So customer relationship management tool, CRM, it's a great operational investment to make for yourself if you're leaning into individual giving or institution giving. It's a way for you to track historical information about your relationship with these folks and how they've engaged with different staff members. So especially if you're not the sole person responsible for fundraising, if there's multiple people communicating with potential funders or institutional givers, a CRM could be a next step for you. Many early stage organizations are using, Excel or Google Sheets to track this, but there's some great low cost options out there, or even some free options for small teams. So getting a volunteer to actually do some research for you on which CRM tool could be the best fit for your organization, and then actually working with you to set up that system for the first time could be a fantastic way to utilize corporate support for your foundation capacity. All right. What other need came up a lot? I'm going to jump to design. That popped up in the chat a few times and was definitely one of the top items in our icebreaker poll. So I want to talk through some design examples. So design and creative is actually one of the buckets where Taproot has quite a large pool of volunteers. So for folks who are maybe newer to utilizing pro bono support, this can actually be a great way to maybe dip your toes in to a shorter term project or engagement with a volunteer partner. Things like creating a package of social media graphics, right? So maybe making something really specific for a campaign that you're hosting in 2026. It's a good way for you to feel out if you're comfortable utilizing pro bono resources at your organization in a low stakes, kind of safe manner. So design and creative, definitely a great option for folks newer to using this type of resource, but a few recommendations here. Longer list on the slide. I think I'll cherry pick. I'll just choose one or two of these. Website design is something that we hear a lot from nonprofits. And so a quick recommendation here. Websites are a huge undertaking for any organization, but especially a nonprofit. And so I recommend that you approach it in stages. Actually, I see Esteban, thank you so much for popping that in the chat. I'm going to use your example. Sometimes a great place to start is working with a volunteer to do an audit, an assessment of your current website, and give you some brutal, candid feedback about, hey, here's where I think you could do better. Maybe it's from an accessibility perspective, maybe it's from a messaging perspective or a design and branding perspective, but connect with someone who's really skilled in user experience design, website design, and get that long list of recommendations of if you're trying to meet this audience or if you're trying to get an audience member to do XYZ on your website, you're going to need to level up this page, or you're going to need to level up this messaging. That is such a valuable place to start, because once you have those expert recommendations, then you can move into whatever design or development projects may come next. That might be a copywriting project, right? It could be linking up with someone who's really great with messaging. It could be working with someone who's really skilled at branding to retool your brand kit and your colors or your logo. Or it could be updating your website with accessibility guidelines in place. And those are all three very different projects where you would connect with three very different volunteers, but you could move forward with all of those projects simultaneously once you have that list of UX recommendations in hand. So that's a great place to start if you're considering any website work. A few other notes here. Sometimes we get questions from nonprofits about if you're able to link up with local volunteers, and this is a good place for me to address that one. So some projects have to be done locally, right? You see photography here on this slide. Yes, so you can link up with local volunteers through Taproot. Every time you post a project through our system, we'll ask you if you need to connect with a local volunteer, if it involves any in-person work. We have quite an extensive volunteer community, but it is going to be more concentrated in urban environments. So we just ask you to keep that in mind. If you're looking for a local volunteer and you're based out of New York City, chances are you'll be able to connect with someone local. Unfortunately, we can't say the same if you are located in rural Nebraska, for example. So just take that with a grain of salt. Good question around acronyms. So UX means user experience design. So we're thinking about the user experience when someone visits your website or is engaging with your organization through a virtual manner. And then CRM would be customer relationship management tool. All right. I want to keep zooming, and I'm going to jump to, we've talked through fundraising, business strategy or business planning, and design. So I want to jump to something a little different. Let's touch on HR. This came up in a lot of the chats I was seeing earlier around how are we investing in our people during this time of change and this time of stress and anxiety from a socio-political lens. So a few thoughts here. One, investing in your people, investing in your internal systems, that is capacity building. That is investing in yourself so that your organization is set up for long-term success and stability in the years ahead. So I know that some of these projects may not be as flashy as some of the fundraising or design related items that we just talked through. But I have to say, in my conversations with nonprofits over the years, these HR projects, these operational projects, they have the long-term payoff, right? You invest the time and energy now, and it pays off in dividends along the way. Things like conducting a DEI audit and getting a list of recommendations on where your organization could do more when it comes to creating an inclusive board recruitment strategy or staff recruitment and engagement strategy, those things pay off in the long run, right? Same with a performance management process or up-leveling your existing HR handbook or volunteer handbook. I also would mention this board effectiveness and board governance came up earlier quite a bit. And so I want to touch on this project example specifically. So board engagement, it's understandably can be a tricky topic to delve into and lead a board effectiveness audit if you are the executive director or leader of your nonprofit, to say like, okay, I'm going to be conducting an audit of how board members' positions are affecting progress towards our organization's goals, missions, making sure everyone's meeting the mark. That can be an awkward area to delve into. And so this is a really great way to bring in external expertise who is experienced with evaluating senior leadership, but also evaluating like what are your organizational leadership needs currently and in the future. Right. So this could be an audit of your existing board positions and the existing like audiences or stakeholder segments that your board members currently represent. And this person could then make recommendations of, hey, I see a real lack of legal or finance expertise on your board. I recommend that you bring in people. Your next round of recruitment is focused on those two areas. And I recommend that you recruit from these specific communities in order to fill out other missing perspectives that you currently have. It could also look like having like some performance management or expectation setting structure put in place for your existing board members to create consistent buy-in around this is the behavior that is expected from a board member on a yearly basis. So attendance at X number of virtual meetings, attendance at X number of in-person meetings, a give-get that includes a certain amount of pro bono support, of in-kind donations, or financial donations. Those are all reasonable for you to create as a deliverable from a board effectiveness audit. And then board recruitment strategy, I would say that could be a good way to stack pro bono projects on each other. If you start with a board effectiveness audit, then I think that will lead you to have a really good sense of the expertise that you need to bring in for your next board member positions. So depending on the expertise you need to bring in, then you could create a recruitment strategy. And you can actually work with a Taproot volunteer to execute that recruitment strategy. So they can create like board member positions for you, get them out on recruitment platforms, help you with the interview process as well. Really quickly, because I'm trying to be cognizant of time, leadership coaching. I highly recommend this one. We have some fantastic leadership coaches available through the Taproot community. And I would say this is an under-tapped resource. And I know why, because, I'm a lifelong nonprofit professional myself. I'm a people leader. I lead a team here at Taproot. And it is so difficult to justify like investing in myself, in my own resiliency and my own skills. It's so tough to take the time to do that, but it is so important. Someone noted earlier the importance of staff investment, staff development during this period where we could see increased burnout. Investing in yourself is an investment in your team. It's an investment in your organization, and the resources, the higher level of engagement, involvement, and mission impact that you're able to make. So I recommend leadership coaching for yourself or other folks across your team that could benefit from it. This includes board members, right? Leadership coaches could be tapped to support them as well. All right. Yeah, leadership coaching, not restricted to the executive director, can definitely be extended to other key staff members. Yeah, so I'm seeing a question around the DEI item on here. So ways that I've seen this play out in the past, when we're thinking about DEI, we're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. You could also throw accessibility and belonging into there as well. I know some folks use that extended acronym. And so there are professionals who specialize in this type of consulting work, who come into organizations, do an audit of what policies, practices, whether they are official practices and policies, or whether they are unofficial and are just felt rather than are specifically defined, that are impacting the culture of your organization. This could be in the way that your staff operates, treats one another. It can also be present in your volunteer or board communities as well. And so these professionals can come in, do an audit and assessment. Typically, it involves some surveying, so focus groups or one-on-one interviews with stakeholders, internal and external. And then they'll come up with a list of recommendations for how you can immediately and in a long-term staggered way make progress towards becoming a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization. All right. So again, keeping an eye on time because I want to switch to Q&A really soon. Just pointing out, there's a few slides here that we didn't have a chance to cover directly, but this deck will be shared with everyone afterwards. So I've got some advice here on some marketing related projects, again, from a more like strategic infrastructure building lens, and some operations projects as well. As accounting and finance. So even though we don't have time to dig into those specifically, you will have access to this deck after the event. But for now, I want to make sure I quickly touch on how you can actually connect with support. So I'll breeze through this, then we can spend the bulk of our time on Q&A. So if you don't yet have an account on Taproot, I recommend that's your next step. And feel free to do that right now as we're chatting. I don't mind if you pop up another tab and you're doing this at the same time that I'm talking with you. Head to taprootfoundation.org and sign up for a nonprofit account. It's really as simple as that. Taproot is a nonprofit that exists to support our fellow nonprofits. And as such, we do not charge a fee for our services. So everything that I just talked through, all of those pro bono project examples, those are real life ways that nonprofits have used our programs, are currently using our programs to connect with volunteer talent. And there's no fee for our resources or utilizing our services. So definitely head to Taproot Plus, create your account, and you'll have two core options when you sign up to access support. And so I want to take a moment just to talk through those options. One is going to be called sessions. These are 1-hour consultation calls with a volunteer. These are a great place for brainstorming and immediate troubleshooting. So a couple of examples here. Maybe you use Salesforce, but you don't have a Salesforce person on staff. You aren't an expert and you're having issues with a report. Great. Let's get a session for you. We can do a screen share with a Salesforce volunteer. They can work with you in that hour together to resolve the issue so you can move forward. Okay, fantastic. From a brainstorming side of things, maybe you are considering customer relationship management tools and maybe Salesforce, maybe something else, right? You want to compare, you want to talk about pros and cons. You can connect with CRM professionals during a session just to brainstorm what your options should be. They can talk to you about what your current needs are, what your current usages are, like how you're tracking that data. And they can make some recommendations on, I actually don't think Salesforce is the right fit for you. I'd recommend checking out these tools instead. So sessions, a great place for quick brainstorming or immediate troubleshooting. Sessions can actually help you prepare for our other offering, which is called projects. Projects are multi-week partnerships with a skilled volunteer. So these projects are likely going to last like 2 to 12 weeks. The volunteers donating around 2 to 5 hours of time each week. And so these are not ongoing positions. These are discrete projects with a specific end goal in mind. So that's good to remember because Taproot staff review every single project and session request that gets submitted through our system. So you're connecting with us online, but I promise the human element is most certainly there. Myself and other team members, we're looking at every single one of these needs. And we'll help you if maybe the scope, we have a few recommendations for how we could make it be a stronger scope of work. We think it'll be more likely to connect with volunteers. We'll work with you to do that. But keep in mind, we're reviewing everything. And so if we see something come in that's like, I need someone to manage my grants process. I need someone to apply for like these 10 grants and create a grants management process and set up my CRM. Like, whoa, okay, that's a lot for even a full-time role to take on. So we're going to need to work with you to break that into specific projects instead. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. No positions, just projects. A few examples of multi-week projects. We already covered quite a few earlier in the presentation, but I'd also throw out items like on the marketing side of things, connecting with a volunteer to set up your Google Ads account for the first time, or create key messages for your organization if you've never had like that value proposition language fleshed out before. On the operations side of things, having someone come in and conduct an AI readiness assessment. I know that was mentioned earlier as kind of an emerging trend folks are thinking about as they're going into 2026 planning. When you're thinking about use of AI at your nonprofit, you need to be thinking about the cybersecurity risks, the personal identifiable information risks, policies that your organization may want to have in place so that your staff members aren't just entering in personal information into ChatGPT or open AI models. So working with an AI professional to kind of do an assessment of where your organization's use of AI is and what's going to be needed to use AI responsibly moving forward could be a great place to start there. All right, and if for any more ideas, suggestions, we do have this nifty page on our website, the Pro Bono menu, which is a great place for folks to turn for even more ideas. I know we didn't have a chance to dig into each of these items during today's webinar. If we did that, it would not be a 1-hour webinar. It would be like a half-day event. So definitely check out this page and let my team know if you have any questions. We'd love to dig in with you. And I know Kristen just dropped those links in the chat. And Kristen, if you don't mind, maybe we could get the Taproot Plus sign up link as a banner at the top of the screen just to make that easy for folks to click into. All right, and as she's doing that, I want to make sure I can get to some of these questions. Hopefully I addressed some of these questions as we went. I tried to hit on some of the big ones that I was seeing come into the chat box, but let me do some rapid fire answers of some of the remaining ones. All right, so can we apply for more than one volunteer if you have multiple focus areas? Yes. We actually prefer if you are breaking up your pro bono requests by expertise area. Folks who are coming to us from the corporate space tend to be a little bit more granular with the skill sets that they're using day to day than folks that are coming from the nonprofit world. I don't know about you all, but in my current nonprofit capacity, I am jumping between people management, program design, evaluation strategy, marketing communications, volunteer engagement, finance and accounting, strategic planning. I'm jumping between those 10 different hats on a day-to-day basis, right? But when you think about folks that are coming from the corporate environment, they are going to be much more focused on maybe just one or two of those professional strengths day by day. And so we find that pro bono projects are much more effective at recruiting the right volunteer and then successfully being completed with the right volunteer if you are very specific with the task or like deliverable that you're looking for from that volunteer. So as an example, if you need someone or if you as an organization need to create a strategy for next year, you could bring someone in to assist with creating a marketing strategy for here's how we are going to use our marketing channels to bring in more individual donors in 2026. That is a project in and of itself. Then another project will be creating copy that is going to be used during that campaign, creating a graphics package that will be used during that campaign, creating a PR, like a media kit to be used during that campaign. Each of those are going to be their own separate volunteer project. All right. Is there an optimum number of volunteers to engage at the same time? Fantastic question. Pro bono is free of financial cost, but it does take time and energy to manage effectively. Where I see pro bono projects fail most frequently is because the nonprofit does not have the time or space to effectively manage that volunteer resource. So they haven't invested the right amount of time to do onboarding, to do knowledge transfer, to get the volunteer what they need to be successful in the project, or they haven't done the due diligence to get board and staff buy-in before entering into that pro bono project. So those are all items to keep in mind before recruiting a volunteer. I typically think of Volunteer management, you're going to need to devote a few hours each week to it. So make sure that you have at least an hour set aside for a weekly touch base with your volunteer. Make sure that you have like 1 or 2 hours set aside for review and feedback of whatever materials they're sending to you for review. So between like 3 to 5 hours of your time each week just towards like volunteer onboarding, feedback, and check-ins would be a good space to reserve. So it depends on your schedule and how much people management you have space for. For some people, one project is all they have capacity to manage. For some people, they take on like 3 different volunteer projects at a time, and that works well for them. All right, some questions around where volunteers are coming to Taproot from, and then volunteer vetting. So I'm going to try and group my response to some of those questions together. So volunteers come to Taproot with a variety of motivations. Some are maybe new to the workforce. They are in the first couple of years of their professional journey. They're looking for ways to build their resume so that they're able to take on more advanced positions in the future. And there's not a lot of leadership opportunities in whatever corporate environment that they're currently a part of. And so they come to us looking for ways to really build that resume. Kind of a similar motivation to folks who are job searching, and they're looking for ways to fill their professional portfolio during this career gap. So keeping skills sharp, maybe honing human skills like project management, cross-cultural communications, etc. Pro bono is an amazing space for that. We also have folks who are retired or maybe are more senior in their career, and they're just looking for ways to fill time and space and continue leveraging the things that they're really good at and the things they find purpose in doing. And then there's some folks who are honestly just motivated by what they're hearing and seeing on the news and in their communities each day. They want to find ways to give back, to feel more connected to their local community or to causes they care about. And even though they are incredibly busy, both personally and professionally, they need to connect with organizations like yours. They need to feel that sense of closeness and progress towards these lofty social goals. And your opportunities give them that space, give them that opportunity. So a variety of motivations. So some folks are going to be more senior than others. You can always add in your pro bono project description. If you're looking for someone on the more senior side, you can say so, right? If you're open to someone who's more entry level, you can say that too. We put you as the nonprofit in the driver's seat of your pro bono interactions. So if you have a preference, don't be afraid to state it. All right. Volunteer vetting. So when you post an opportunity on Taproot, volunteers have a chance to apply to that opportunity. They submit an application, which is going to have like a statement of interest. You'll be able to see that volunteer's resume, online portfolio, or LinkedIn profile. It depends on what they've chosen to connect to their Taproot account. And from those items, that's your first chance to suss out whether that person could be a good fit for your organization. And from those items, if you don't think that they're a good fit, you can politely decline them right away. And there's no harm in that. If you think they could be a fit for a project, what you will do is Taproot, our system, will help you set up an interview call. So this is a screening call for you and the volunteer. This is a chance for you to vet the volunteer for skill fit, but also for collaboration fit. As we talked about before, pro bono means that this person is joining your team for a period of weeks. And so you want to make sure that you have a sense of their communications preferences, expectations. You have a sense of what their timeline for the project could look like. See if that jives with your expectations and your ways of working, because this person is effectively becoming a teammate of yours. And so you want to make sure that it's going to be a good fit there. And Taproot is actually currently working on some personalized tools that are going to be embedded at this interview stage to help provide you with some more vetting resources. They will be personalized based on the category of need that you are looking to connect with a volunteer in. And it's fueled by AI and Taproot's 20 plus years of doing nonprofit volunteer matchmaking. So stay tuned for that. It should be launching in the next month. All right, I'm wondering how competitive it is to get a consultant. What's the timeline for finding out? Around 85% of our pro bono requests get applications within the first 14 days of being posted, applications and matches. So we try to hit a pretty fast-paced timeline in getting you connected with support. That said, it depends on the need area you're asking for. Some need areas are going to be more competitive than others. I will tell you right now that if you come to us asking for grant writing support, that is going to be a competitive area to find volunteers in because it is a high-paying, very in-demand role from a paid consultant perspective, which means that there's a smaller community of folks who are on Taproot Plus doing it for free. So that's just one example. Grant writing, incredibly competitive, may take longer. Same with Google Ads or digital marketing, incredibly competitive area to find volunteers in. So when you're submitting your request, make sure that you're really talking up how this project will impact your organization and community in the long term, because that's going to be the hook when you're recruiting volunteers through Taproot. You really want to make them feel what the impact on their organization is going to be longer term. Okay. If asked for an agreement with a fiscal sponsor, just email it to our help desk. Taproot Plus is open to organizations, social good organizations based in the US, UK, EU, India, and Canada. And so if you are fiscally sponsored by an organization based in any of those eligible regions, even if you're not in one of those eligible regions, but you're fiscally sponsored by someone who is, fantastic. We're looking forward to working with you. You just need to send us that documentation to the help desk, which is help@taprootplus.org. Okay. All right. I know I'm a couple minutes over, so I appreciate folks hanging around, sticking with me. I want to make sure I'm getting to a couple more. All right. I'm seeing a question on a volunteer submit a request for payment. All right, so thank you so much for calling that out. That's actually against Taproot's terms of service. So this is a really clear-cut one. If you have someone who reached out to you saying, hey, I'll do this work, but you have to pay me, that person is not in line with Taproot community standards and needs to be removed from the program. So please just notify our staff as soon as possible. And I apologize that that was an experience that you had. Taproot, we operate in good faith and expect our nonprofit and volunteer users to operate in good faith as well. And pro bono does mean free, so no payment associated. Claire just asked if there are examples of well-written volunteer requests. Great question, because that lets me have the opportunity to plug a tool that I am embarrassed that I haven't mentioned yet. So when you are requesting support through Taproot, you are going to see two tools at the top of your screen. One of those is pre-scoped project templates. These are examples of well-written volunteer requests. So these are templates like conducting a SWOT analysis, creating a recruitment strategy, developing a content calendar for your organization. All of these have been created with best practices in mind. So the scope of work is going to be tailored to a volunteer who can accomplish it in 2 to 12 weeks, donating X number of hours each week. They have deliverables clearly listed. So check out those templates, see if there's something that resonates with your need. And if it does, just lightly tailor it so it's specific to your organization. The other tool is an AI scoping agent. Again, this is new as of this fall, so you're some of the first people to hear about it and be able to use it. It's an agent that we trained up on Taproot's 24 plus years of facilitating really high quality pro bono engagements. So it's trained on the types of volunteer requests that connect connect successfully with talent. So use our templates, use our AI scoping tool. We want to make this process as easy and low lift for you nonprofits as possible. All right. Oh my gosh, I'll end things with this great question from Viha. Given the time of year it is right now, should we wait to submit an application? I would actually encourage you to get your requests in right now, because people are about to be off for their holiday breaks. People are about to be thinking about their New Year's resolutions. They're going to be thinking about, how can I strengthen my skills? How can I do more for my community? How can I move the needle on this social issue that I feel like is under attack right now? They are hungry. They're going to be looking for those ways to give back during the holiday season, and as soon as the new year starts. Taproot always sees a spike in volunteer activity at the very start of the year. So I would get your requests in right now so that they can be active for January 1st when that comes along. All right. I am going to go ahead and close things out here. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today on a Monday. I know it's a busy time of year, but we so appreciate you making the space for us. It was great getting to know you through the chat box, but I hope I'll get to know you through email and through some more face-to-face times in the future. Please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or my team with questions. We are here to support your work. We genuinely, we're nonprofit people. We are a nonprofit. We live and breathe pro bono. We live and breathe nonprofit capacity building. So leverage us, lean on us. We can't wait to learn about you and the incredible work that you're doing, and be able to support you. So I hope that you have a great rest of this year. And I hope that we're all working very closely together in 2026, making your ambitious, necessary goals and strategies come to life. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Be well.